Relationships are a major part of the world. They actually drive the entire world. Whether it is family dynamics, friendships, or actual love between a boy and a girl. Now, I am not commenting on whether these relationships are always good or not. There have been multiple cases where these relationships involved abuses and even killings, and how these relationships impact the future generations that come out of it as a result of them. Basically, you can classify them as bad or good. If there is a healthy relationship in a family, you can clearly say, yeah, that's a normal family and that's a healthy household. But when you see a distorted family or a family that on the outside looks like a normal one, but there are layers of complexities in the relationships that exist in that family, and they become so obvious that it becomes easy to figure it out. But there is one more kind of relationship that exists in families and rarely gets discussed, like ever. The kind of relationship that if we hear the term associated with it, the first thing that will come to your mind will be disgust or the concept of illegality.
Look, Clary, I don't believe it. It doesn't feel like the truth, not in my heart.
You'll start wondering that how is that even possible?
She doesn't want to believe you because she is in love with you.
But when the same thing is fed to you digitally or in the form of pop culture, you will find it okay, and you have been finding it okay so far. And I've seen a lot of people rooting for it. It's really a dilemma for me, as I was trying to understand if it can be put in a category of good or bad. And believe me on this, I'm still trying to find the answer to it. So this video is not me telling you about whether this is good or bad, but it is rather about the opinion I generated about this relationship after reading and thinking about it. And all the opinions are welcome in the comment section, and this video is about actually starting a discussion with you guys on whether you can put this into a category or not. The relationship that I was talking about is actually termed as incest. For those of you who don't know about this term, well, to be very quite frank with you, you are in a good zone so far, because as soon as you will start searching about this term, the complexity of relationship or the real world will kick in very fast. But since you are watching this video, let's be a bit mature and decode this. Incest is basically a sexual relationship within close relatives like a parent or your child, sister and brother, stepmother, etc. And this definition was picked from the internet, so I can strongly assume that as soon as you hear the word sexual in it, you will be triggered because it's instantaneously a red alarm for you, right? But here it gets more complicated. Rather than getting involved in a sexual relationship directly, the sexual relationship generates after having mutual feelings for each other. Let's just forget about this term closely related that I told you before. Let's just take an instance of a boy and girl falling for each other and then generating a sexual relationship. Well, that's certainly the order of most healthy relationships in this world. First, you develop a certain connection or mutual bond with the girl you are dating, and then you take a further step into it. And if you think about it, that is exactly what is happening in this incest part as well, except of the close relatives part. The funniest part about this scenario is that as soon as you heard the term incest, I'm assuming this, you might be wondering that why am I even trying to frame incest as a good or bad thing? There must be laws against it, right? And when the law restricts it, it must be illegal and wrong. End of discussion. But wait right there for a second. The story has a twist to it because there is no law stating that it is not allowed. Now where do we go with this? At least I'm talking about India right now, and I know having a relationship with a child that is not an adult is a straight away crime, and luckily we are also not discussing that part. Many countries also have laws that restrict incestuous relationships, and it is a punishable crime there. But there are also many countries that allow it. And after all this discussion, you might be wondering, this is such a heavy topic and we must acquire in-depth knowledge of society and culture to even discuss it. Well, actually no. You and I watch and read tons of content that actually portray these relationships and we enjoy it as well, not knowing. The prime instance of it, so that everyone can understand, is the Lannisters in Game of Thrones. The relationship between Jaime and Cersei is an example of it. I know Cersei was a bitch and Jaime himself was not that good at all. I know at the end many of you wanted Cersei to end in pain, but also many of you wished for them to be together. And guess what? The director actually did that. Now don't fight me for it. We didn't wish that. The neighbor of yours is the culprit then. Even in Bollywood also. And I was assuming that we are not that far ahead, but there are instances in Bollywood too. There is a movie that is almost close to being incestuous. Well, technically, now that I have watched it, it is actually incestuous. The all-time favorite movie, Lamhe. In this movie, the protagonist played by Anil Kapoor comes to India to meet his family, where he falls in love with a girl played by Sridevi. But Sridevi is in love with some other guy and marries him, and Anil Kapoor is left heartbroken. But here is the catch. Sridevi and the man she marries in the movie gives birth to a girl, and soon after they die in a car accident maybe, Anil Kapoor takes the responsibility of that girl as a godfather. He basically looks after her upbringing, education, nutrition, health, everything. But the girl, as she grows up, starts to look exactly like her mother, Sridevi. I know this is a classic Bollywood plot twist, I know. Now this girl falls in love with Anil Kapoor. Now you might understand where we are going with this. Anil always maintained the distance between them as he knew the boundary and the role he was playing for this child. But at the end, the classic Bollywood ending, love prevails and wins, which is kind of weird in this scenario. So Anil also falls for the girl whom he was a godfather of. Well, now some may also argue that this also breaks the stereotype of there is no age in love. Right? Love have no age as long as the girl is of age of consent. Same goes with the boy. And I totally agree with that. But the point I'm trying to make is that it was an incestuous relationship that we actually missed. And we all loved the movie and its songs. Let's take this discussion a bit further. The anime culture is widely known, right? And by the time I spoke this word anime, you people might be getting where I'm trying to go with this. Because most of you knew the actual meaning of the word incest and probably learned it from anime only. Not probably, I think definitely. In anime or manga, there is tons of content that actually explore these relationships and we actually love them. For instance, Grand Blue. The relationship between Iori and Chiza is that of cousins only, and the writer of the manga, Inoue, builds up the romance between them. But after a certain amount of time, he reveals that these two are not related by blood, so that it doesn't fall in the incest category, but it did. Because just by saying that these two are unrelated by blood, does it erase the feeling that they actually behave as cousins in the story for the most part? And also the romantic build-up they have. Now does it really matter for the fans that they are related by blood or not? Because the fans were already rooting for them, right? Even the most incest discussing manga, The Domestic Girlfriend, which Gant always defends for some reason, I don't know why, explores incestuous relationships. But not for a single moment while reading the manga did the readers ever portray the feeling of, attachment with the relationship dynamic that the protagonist had with both the girls in it. The ending is sort of messed up for Domestic Girlfriend, but as Gant says,
because a lot of thought was really put into the characters. So the characters actually seem really realistic and you can kind of like empathize with them, right? What you can't relate to is the fucking situation that they're in.
This is incest, Gant, and this is like what if we made all porn categories into one? This is what it sounds like.
Basically,
this is like
basically
combine every porn. Where are the laundry machines?
Okay.
Get 4 of them in this house.
if the writer provides you with the ecchi stuff and romantic build-up, Would you actually care about the relationship dynamic then? Even in the most hentai manhwas, if you read them, I had to read certain for this video. Nowadays explore the same concept of a protagonist effing his Ajuma. You can Google this term by yourself, or sister, or any other relationship that he had in that family. Now I'm not gonna give you any recommendations here, but this genre is for fun and fun only. Let's not be that critical about it, okay? The whole point of revealing this as an example is that even in porn, we are actually watching or reading incest relationships. And don't tell me you're not enjoying it, you creep and liar. But the fun stuff is one aspect of it. There is also a flip side to it. Take for an instance Berserk, where the old king who was shown as just a king in the story suddenly turns into a disgusting old man who just goes insane when he comes to know that Griffith had sex with his daughter. And it is revealed in further story that this old shit wanted to have a sexual relationship with his own daughter, and suddenly becomes an animal so cruel that he tries to rape his own daughter and also do this to her lover Griffith. But here I want to reveal the actual movie that put this idea into my mind and made me want to discuss it. The cult movie Old Boy. Now there are technically 3 versions of this movie. The original version, which is Korean, the Hollywood version by the same name, and lastly the Bollywood version. Yes, there is a Bollywood version of it too. The name of it is Zinda, starring Sanjay Dutt and John Abraham. Now, I've only watched the original Korean version, but think about it for a second. A topic that have 3 different adaptations in multiple languages, don't you think that the topic holds some kind of potential in it? And actually, yes, it does. The story deals with a man who was talking in a phone booth with his wife, and he recently had a child daughter and is suddenly kidnapped. And he is put into a room for 15 years. And in these 15 years, his wife was murdered and his daughter was also kidnapped and was nowhere to be found. But after 15 years, he was released from the room and seeks out revenge on the person who did all this. In this revenge process, he befriends a young girl who helps him find the main culprit behind this. And now you might be able to decode where we are going with this. In this process, they both fall in love with each other and also have sex consensually. But later it is revealed that the antagonist's motive behind doing all of this was also revenge, as the antagonist also had a relationship with his sister in childhood, and the protagonist once saw them in classroom and then told one of his friend who started a rumor in school. And the sister of the antagonist started feeling symptoms of phantom pregnancy, which to describe in simple words is like having symptoms of pregnancy but not being actually pregnant. And finally she committed suicide out of depression and anxiety. Anyway, the antagonist reveals to the so-called protagonist in this movie that the girl that he had sex with consensually was his own daughter. And both you father and daughter were actually hypnotized in those 15 years so that when you both meet after so many years, you actually fall in love. Now, after finding out the truth, the protagonist literally begs, even becomes a dog and licks the antagonist's shoes. And holy shit, there is a scene in this movie where the protagonist cuts his own tongue by scissors to actually show the antagonist that he never ever wants the daughter to find out that the father had feelings for her, or vice versa. But it is insane, I cannot show you that. He begs him not to mention the truth to his own daughter as it will scar her for the rest of her life. What happens in the end then? Well, I don't want to spoil the entire movie. I spoiled the majority of it. You'll actually have to watch it yourself. But in the conclusion part of the story, there is a scene where the protagonist is sitting with the same lady who hypnotized him, showing us that he wants her to hypnotize him again to make him forget the truth because he can't live with this guilt. The next scene is of young girl, that is his daughter, hugging the protagonist and saying that I love you, and we are basically left with this camera on protagonist's face, where the expression on his face at this last frame can be described as both happy and guilty at the same time. And it is left for us to decide whether he was hypnotized or not. Masterpiece, right? Truly a cult movie. But the important point still remains. What about the complications? The hell lot of examples that we gave before this were of this kind of relationship that was not bad, as it was naturally built up over time and made even the fans root for it. Even in Old Boy, until the end when the truth is not revealed, you root for the protagonist and the girl, and even the director gave this cliffhanger ending so that the one who was rooting for them actually gets a happy ending. And the one who thinks that they shouldn't have been in a relationship at all will sleep soundly, assuming that for the rest of the protagonist's life there was guilt and nothing else. There is a line in this movie that actually sums up this discussion, or you can say complicates it even more. The antagonist of the movie says that he and his sister were actually in love with each other, so it was fine for them, but you both were hypnotized to fall in love, so will you be okay with that? This is a very well written, confusing line because it raises a simple question. If two beings are in an incestuous relationship and love each other unconditionally, does this justify that relationship? But also coming to the real world then, if you go on the internet today and search about incest, you will find out that in a lot of royal families there used to be a lot of incestuous relationships because they wanted to preserve royal lineage. But since these two beings who were in relationship with each other closely resembled each other genetically, there were a lot of genetical disorder in the offspring that they gave birth to. Now, I don't know about the accuracy of this information, but there are a lot of articles that support this idea. But there are also a lot of articles that actually, bash this entire idea. I don't know who to believe. I'll just go with the majority of articles that exist on the internet. Also, many stories from real world people describe that incest relationship in their life was used to harass them physically in their childhood when they were not old enough to understand this complicated stuff. But there are also many people that are just living with it and have no problem from it. But by the discussion we have had so far, I think as long as it is served digitally, like in some form of content, then it's fine, as it's fictional and we can relate to it. Probably you can relate to it, I don't know. But the thing is that when we start talking about the real world, there are a lot of complications attached to it and that come with it. And by complications, I don't mean age complications or relation complications. I'm talking about biological complications or the physical abuse complications. So as long as there are no complications attached to it, then it is fine, I guess. But again, as I said in the beginning, we can't actually put this into one category of good or bad. It really depends on the situation of the individuals. There may be individuals who will get scarred for life with this, or there may be individuals that are actually fine with it so far. But the rest of it is for you to decide in the comments. Bye.